We finishing off today, and I want to be framing this because we talking digital, and that's what I personally do on my everyday work. So I'm a digital lead at Sasol, and I think to inspire this session, I just want to talk about what actually inspired Sasol to go through what we call a digital transformation. So a digital transformation at Sasol is not something that was internally inspired. It was something that was externally inspired. What I mean by that is that customers were screaming certain voices to us. We did not really understand what those voices are until we took time to really listen quite closely to what those voices are. As I always say, sometimes customers themselves do not necessarily know what they actually need. The perfect example of that is customers sometimes will come to you and order half-inch drill bit, only to find that they actually want half-inch hole. And half-inch drill bit and half-inch hole are actually two different things, as related as they were. So we went through the journey of engaging with our customers, listening quite carefully in terms of what they want. What transpired, actually customers, what they wanted from us was self-serving channels. What I mean by that, for an example, if you bought a fridge at whichever shop, you don't want, when the fridge isn't working, you don't want to be picking up a phone call and calling. What people actually do, if you've noticed what you've done, you go into YouTube to figure out how does this thing work, you Google. Those are self-helping channels. So what we then did, we conceptualized that by implementing what we call e-commerce platforms for customers to actually order our products online and to some degree make those orders touchless. What I mean by that is, how does a customer buy product from Sasol as they would buy a product from Amazon? With that, the digital transformation strategy was born in Sasol. The message here again to you is, listen to what customers are demanding of you. If Sasol is your customer, what is Sasol's pain point? How do you solve that pain point? As Sasol, we may not necessarily understand what is it that is paining us. But if you do listen quite carefully, you can actually figure out what is it that is paining us. And then you pitch your solution to us. And if you do that, our user experience of that pain or whatever will be improved. And that's actually how you get customer satisfaction. That's how you make money. So with that, I would like to introduce the panel to talk about digital. And before I ask them to introduce themselves, post that, I'll also ask them to share some opening remarks. But to kick off this session, let me do the introductions. Gentleman on the left is Zamani Ngidi from AON. Been around. I see in his CV, I've done a lot of, for an example, been involved with the AON, had a lot of skill transfers, operated across multiple spaces, working with UK offices, very global mindset in terms of where he's been, information securities, everything that impacts digital. And I would like Zamani to actually, once I've introduced everyone, to speak a little bit about himself from his own perspective, and I'll do the same with others. Next to him, we have Loyiso, founder and managing director of Clyrofor. Clyrofor.
Yes.
Wow, what a name.
You had it.
Again, been quite involved in this space. I like this because actually, cybersecurity, that's the space you're operating in, it's something that is emerging, given the emergence of multiple technologies. that's actually how cybersecurity companies, in my view, make business. So I do believe you're in the right place at the right time. Again, Loyiso, I would like you to also speak a little bit about yourself before you kind of share your preliminary remarks on this topic. And then we have, I call him MJ, is with us here at Sasol. I'm currently a group digital platforms manager at Sasol, really making sure that the work we've kicked off can be sustained and evolve and make sure we kind of can have, applications that can help us to adapt to shifting customer needs, et cetera. So again, I'd like MJ to also talk a little bit about himself before he shares some preliminary remarks on this topic. And then finally, I have Shukri from Blink Digital Technologies, a business strategist, 18 years of experience, very good, for an example, experience ranging from multiple companies that he did businesses for, Coca-Cola, HP, et cetera. So Shukri as well, I would like you to kind of talk a little bit about yourself before you share your thoughts on this digitally enabling business topics. So I'm going to go back and ask Zamani, talk about yourself and maybe talk about your perspective in terms of what does it mean to digitally enable business. You're not limited in terms of how you shape your perspective. I think the audience really can't wait to hear from you guys.
Yeah, sure. I think, so firstly, I'm Zamani Ngidi. I'm the client manager for Aon, specifically in South Africa. I've been at Aon since 2013 and, to the point you were making, moved multiple spaces from the perspective of starting in our employee benefits, doing project fund accounting, then doing risk consulting, and then went to the UK to our AGRC offices to do a skills transfer around cyber risk consulting. We acquired a IT specialist firm called Strauss Freeburg. They've done consulting for the likes of Facebook and some other Fortune 500 companies. So with that, we're obviously able to come up with some very niche solutions for our clients. And sort of what I do now is head up the cyber practice here in South Africa and throughout the rest of sub-Saharan Africa. I'm currently doing my master's with Salford Business School. So risk management is my trade, but also did an information security lead auditor course as well. But from the perspective of articulating what is being digitally enabled in this current environment, I think COVID-19 made a huge shift around the importance of being digitally accessible. That the huge shift around the mobilization of the workforce, and ultimately it's around adapting to change. Fundamentally, changing the value proposition, the way that we deliver that value proposition. We're seeing now with laws being enacted from the perspective of POPI in South Africa. We're also seeing a development around things such as intellectual property in the rest of the world and also here in South Africa. That's also starting to become a trend. How do we commercialize things like trademarks, copyrights? I think this forum highlights that the importance that big global businesses are actually investing in media, educating people, trying to again deliver the value proposition in a manner that's sustainable. And I think going forward it's going to be top of mind for everyone. And on the back of that, what I do as a value proposition for our society, and I guess the greater society, is how do we protect the consumers, customers, and how ultimately is the best way that they can deliver their value proposition as safely as possible, fundamentally. Hope that answers the question.
It does, and thanks a lot for that. I'll then go to Loyiso again. Please, if you can share a bit of a background and just your initial thoughts on what is happening in the world today, digital, COVID, challenges, how do we shift, adapt, etc.
Yeah, well, thanks for the opportunity. I'm Loyiso, Boyce. Grew up in Deep Kloof, Soweto. So I'm proud of that. And yeah, I'm in the cybersecurity space. I'm a founder of the business, started the business in 2014. I trained as a software developer, but employment in South Africa is tricky. So early 2000, I couldn't find a job as a software developer. I found a job though as a filing clerk, as a temp somewhere. So I took that, and that led to a sales position, and I've been a salesperson since. So a lot of the stuff that Rams was talking about earlier, I can relate to. So I've worked in the IT space in account management, client executive roles. So anything from account management, client executive, to sales specialist, selling IT solutions. So things from desktops to printers, to what we call end user computing, to the data center space, which is servers and storage. And then it moved to high-end computing. I worked for a few of the local IT companies. Then I got a job at IBM, which changed my life, gave me global exposure. Multinationals, you end up training abroad.
Yeah.
So I joined IBM, spent 4 days there. They said, go get a passport. I was traveling to Dubai for training. So I was in that environment for a couple of years, done training all over the world. The training has always been how to match customer requirements to the solutions that are available to us.
Nice.
So around that space was high-end computing. I started selling into the banks. And because it's high-end computing, you had to justify why you're spending so much. And a bulk of it had to do with security. So we're selling AIX, and you sell that for uptime and security. So my conversations changed. So going from selling commodity to more business-aligned type of deployments. And I found that I enjoyed it. So I did that for IBM, did very well. Went to Microsoft because it's a small industry. But also at Microsoft, I decided I'm going to venture out on my own. It's been tough. It wasn't always like this where I could wear a suit and smile, but it's been fantastic. Yeah, I think in a nutshell, that's who we are. I think what I'm proud of the most is the fact that we have grown. And the space that we find ourselves in, the digital space, presents two opportunities for us. So lots of businesses are going online. So for somebody in my space whose whole existence is to help people get secure in terms of getting digital, it's a boon for us. You mentioned that we're in the right time. It wasn't always the right time. When we started, it was very dry. People thought, what are you doing? So now it's working out. So that's the one thing. The other thing is we are forced to compete with very large businesses. And I want to share with the other SMEs that by leveraging digital tools, you can get quite agile and accomplish quite a lot with a small team. For the size of team that I have and what we're doing, you would never believe it. So deploying things like CRM tools to manage your marketing and your sales processes, but we'll get into that. So yes, I'm looking forward to this. There's value for the SMEs, whether you are selling it or you are putting it internally in your business.
Thank you. MJ, the stage is yours.
Thanks so much, colleagues. So
Great.
MJ Khan joined Sasol 7 years ago. But before Sasol, I actually started my career in 2001. That's when I wrote my first radio ad, and it just sort of gone from there. Started off in traditional advertising, and I transitioned into digital communication about 12 years ago. But in between all of that, I've always had a passion for sharing and just for, sharing knowledge. So I was actually a lecturer for about 12 years.
Nice.
And this is from Natal University. I lectured at Wits for a few years, head of faculty at Rosebank College. So quite a few different places, and I really enjoyed that. And at some point, I looked at digital and I said, how can I actually use digital to really add scale to what I'm doing? Because with the classroom setting, especially traditionally, and when I started lecturing, back in the mid-2000s, I was able to reach maybe 150 to about 300 people, depending on the size of the room. But with digital, it was just amazing in terms of how those national boundaries just fall away, the amount of people you can connect with, you can contact, and you can really inspire. So that's part of what I really enjoyed. And then coming over to Sasol about 7 years ago, just really appreciative that the company just empowers me, gives me that platform to keep sharing. So at Sasol, I manage, and my team manages all the social media, the online, so Sasol.com, all the digital channels. So if you've ever engaged with Sasol on something like, for example, our LinkedIn, which is the largest corporate page in the country, you've probably chatted to me sometime in the last 7 years.
Yeah.
So for that, thanks. And I guess just before I hand over, Just a reminder again to everyone on the webinar, and as well for those who are going to watch this later, because the beautiful thing about knowledge is it's not just about what you do in the present, it's about being able to capture it so that you can reference it later. Because the beauty around it as well is the context, right? So right now you're sitting here, you're watching this webinar, and you have a very specific goal in mind. But 2 months down the line, that context might change. You might be somewhere else on your user journey, and you might need to pull on something else that one of the speakers said about. So that's really powerful, the value to archive. So please, everyone who's tuned in right now, hashtag built to last SME. You can use that on all the platforms we're tracking that across. Or, keep an eye out on the Sasol social media platforms, and we'll package a lot of this for later, just so that this can have maximum benefit going forward. Thanks.
Great. Shukri, the stage is yours. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself and some thoughts you have around this digitally enabling business topic?
Yeah, sure. Shukri Cornelius is my name. I am very happy to be here. I listened to everyone's sort of background. Mine is very short. I essentially spent about 18 years, roughly, working with companies of all sizes. Fortunate to have been able to do so, especially for the learning that comes out of it. You spoke a lot about the learning. It's probably the most enriching part of working, in the space that I did. So I've worked locally, always on working with companies, trying to help them improve. My main focus is around helping companies grow faster, profitably, but also, making sure that they don't grow too fast. And that's where I come alive, I suppose. Companies that's doing exceptionally well, typically, I don't step in there. What I've done recently is to just refocus a little bit and say, the work that I do, it's being done a lot, and often it's focused great strategy work, and whether it's digital, whether it's in another space, is often available to larger companies, in great amounts. There's great people that's working there, but what we do find is that it's not necessarily available to small companies. It's not necessarily available, at the right price, perhaps, or at the right skill levels. So I've decided to dedicate some time to work with micro businesses, small businesses, micro businesses, and see whether I can actually make a difference there. Can I make a difference? And it's been a phenomenal journey for the last couple of years that I'm doing it, and I look forward to continue doing that.
Great, thank you. Gentlemen, I have lots of questions for you. And maybe while I'm still waiting for questions to come through from our audiences, I have a lot. Maybe let's start with the most basic one before we talk about the one that is pertinent to SMEs. This digital topic, we can go, any of you can take this up. I always ask the question, why digital? And I keep getting a lot of answers. And one of the answers that is kind of got stuck in my head is good is no longer good enough. To be good in itself is no longer enough in the world of today. So the question to you is the same question that I keep on asking. Why this digital thing?
So open it to the panel. Open it to the panel.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll jump in.
Yeah. Why?
I'll try to give my take on it. But the most important thing around digital, and it's sort of long-winded, but I'll try to keep it as succinct as possible. So there's a concept around a paper that was written in the US called the decoupling theory, right? So essentially trying to make, historically we've been able to grow economic activity on technological advancement, on tangible related assets, right? So things like mining and things of that nature. But the problem with that is that the earth only has so many resources. So by definition, that economic activity is finite. So technology, the great thing is that it enables us to create value, not necessarily from nothing, but at a far less cost to the environment. Now, and if you think about, the thing that's stuck in your head of why is good no longer good enough, because we need to change. We need to see that, the past was great, but it needs to be better. That's why companies like Kodak are no longer around. Companies like BlackBerry struggle to adapt to that change because we're evolving at a pace whereby we're understanding things a lot better. We know that our impact on society is far more significant. There's a lot more people to service. So all of that brings about a fundamental shift in terms of we can't stop working. We have to be better. And if you're a company, that should be at the most base or the most core part of your business, right? Apple's principle is think differently. So I think that would be my take on sort of that point.
Great. Any more takers? Yeah.
So whenever I give a talk in digital or digital comms, and I think it's important sort of upfront to just talk about the differences, right? So sometimes digital becomes this really scary term, like a monster that lives in the hill, and becomes so overwhelming and so abstract that people just push it away. So I think it's important as well, just before we do anything else, just to ground ourselves and to really say, like, what are we talking about when we talk digital? Now, in terms of my background, it's digital communication. So let me start by perhaps defining digital. And then we can take it from there. And there's so many definitions of digital out there, but the one that really resonates with me is by a strategist named Bud Cadell. And in 2013, he said it, and this is one of the favorite things I've ever read. He said, digital is the participatory layer over all media that allows users to self-select their own experiences. So let me just go back on that. It's the participatory layer, participation over all media that allows people to self-select what they want. And a simple example of that would be if you had to compare traditional television, like whether it's SABC 1, 2, and 3, where everything was so specific, where I remember growing up at 7 o'clock on a Friday was a big deal because that's when we'll watch Airwolf or A-Team, or see, I'm giving my age away, right? but by you laughing, I know you're at that age too. And it was really something stuck in time, where at 7 o'clock, that's when it happened. And we know growing up with parents who loved the news, that there was time for the news. Whereas with digital, and if you look at just the onset of something like YouTube, you're not just sitting there waiting to be served content, you're self-selecting what you want to consume. And I think that's such an interesting way of looking at the world, where it's taking a traditional media, like something like radio, and instead of saying you have to listen to radio at a certain time to hear your song, you can just switch over to Spotify and listen to what you want on demand, video on demand with Netflix. And I think that's one of the fundamental differences of the digital age. In terms of how we're changing, we see that with Web 2.0, with social media, content creators, all of us are content creators. We decide what sort of content we put on our platforms. We decide what kind of content we share on our platforms. And also, to a large extent, what sort of content we block from our platforms. So we're constantly self-selecting and shaping the content that's out there. And that's what it is. If you look at, the four of us, our social media platforms, our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and for the cool ones on the panel, TikTok, it's really made up of the content that we create, the content that we curate, and the content that we share. And I think that's one of the fundamental difference around digital. So when it comes to digital, it isn't about something scary, something that's abstract, something that's out there. It really is about understanding, okay, cool, I've got a business, I've got business objectives. What are these platforms doing to help me meet those? And that's it.
Awesome. Any more takers, or must I shift to the... Okay,
sure.
Thank you. Shukri?
So from my perspective, just if I look at the clients that I work with, what does digital mean to them? Right, and essentially, what I find is that it's a simple thing for them. It's essentially how do I keep making my business work, and how do I keep competing in a digital world? Your competitors could live anywhere, right? There's a simple, very interesting example of what you can be a freelancer now. Or a single person, and you can portray yourself to be a very large agency because you just insource on a platform. You can have a full team that does everything for you, and your client will never know. They'll even they'll even talk to your client, or and all you do is you interact. So if you wanted to grow a business and you wanted to start employing people, and you can do that, doing what you're good at and outsourcing in real time. So for me, digital is really about enabling business, small micro businesses, to take the opportunity and make it work. Compete with larger competitors. Compete with competitors, no matter where they're sitting.
Great, thank you. Loyiso, do you want to
Yes. They've touched on 2 points that speak specifically to how I experience this digitalization phenomena as a business owner. So I like that last point you raised in terms of the economy that we live in now. You can have a small entity but accomplish quite a lot or be seen to be quite big. As Clyrofor, we are rendering services across Africa, from South Africa, because gone are the days where we had to put on our suits and fly to a different country and be a big team to impress the client. You can still do that if you want. Shout out to you. But as an SME, it's not in our capability. And the beauty of this work from home thing is that it's no longer crazy for you to suggest an online meeting to your customer. They don't need to come to your office to see your wonderful. I walked in here, these are amazing. Sasol has beautiful offices. I hope your SMEs have been here. I walked in here, I was blown away, and I hope one day will be this profitable. But we're not there yet. But what it allows us to do, in the same way that we're coming across to you now live, we are rendering services to customers all over the continent using digital platforms. That's the one thing. And you touched on competition as well. You know, being a business owner, having to process the leave, process the pipeline, the digital platforms, MailChimp, social media. If you're going to be logging onto one thing at a time, you are going to run yourself ragged. Since we went digital, so our HR system, we've got an HR system where people can manage their own leave system. That's a simple version of going digital. My life has improved. And we do the same thing across sales as well. So when it's time for performance reviews, no one is guessing and thumb-sucking. There's evidence of everything that you need. You touched on POPI as well. One of the things we provide for our customers is POPI governance. POPI is the Protection of Personal Information Act. Well, POPI is Protection of Information Act. You've seen a number of hacks that have happened to large businesses. That act seeks to put financial and time, okay, it's up to 10 million rand or 2 years in jail for the information officer if they have not been compliant and they suffer a breach. Why? Because it's our information that these people are stealing. So in order to control your information, if you have paperwork everywhere, everything is still done in files, how are you going to protect your customers' information? So going digital, where everything is on the server, where there's access controls, there's logging, you know who did what, allows us to win. Just to finish off on this point, we have a massive crime problem in this country, whether it's corruption, whether it's just dockets going missing. Simple things of digitizing an arrest record would go a long way to assisting us, because it's on the system. You would know it's duplicated, multiple copies. You can't no longer go buy a docket. You know, so yeah. We make it this whole big thing. But if we break it down in our own personal lives, you applying for Uber. That's digital. You know, you are going on the app, you're ordering Uber. So it's not this big monster. It's here. It's with us. There's no running away from it. We might as well embrace it and find ways of exploiting it to make it work for you in all aspects of our lives.
Yeah. So let's bring it home, right? And I want to bring it home because we have audiences that could benefit from these discussions. And let me preface this question this way. So, as Sasol, we have come to the realization that some of our SMEs do not have enough capital to kick off their, digital transformation journeys. So we have since put up some digital centers in Sasol in Secunda for people to come in. If it's a, piping designing company, they can come in there, they literally can come in there, log into our computers, use our CAD softwares for free and do all of that. We're just trying to kind of get people started. We have, free internet services, especially in deprived communities, internet cafes used for free with some of the applications that can actually help them to do business. So the theme there is money. How do we, a lot of SMEs do not have 10 million rand that they can access now to, build these big digital things and compete. How do they start? If you have to take a traditional SME that wants to do something, they have little resources, how they can use the little that they have to actually kick off the process, digitize their processes, and in fact earn income while they're doing that. I mean, because we're not talking AON. You have billions of friends.
Not me personally.
Yeah, you can literally do what you want. How do we narrow it down to our audiences who wants to be part of this emerging world with the little resources that they have? What would be your insights? How would you share?
Since I've done it, I'd like to jump on this one.
Please.
Having gone through this, I think the first thing is life is not fair, so accept that. If you don't have money, you don't have money. If you still want to make it happen, accept that it's not fair. It's going to be easier for other people. So it's just get that accepted, because it's going to be a hard journey because you don't have money.
Yeah.
So then you start looking. That's why I'm sure, I hope I didn't make a noise. I responded positively when you mentioned that you make stuff like CAD software. I know how expensive that is. So you do that. You look out for wonderful organizations such as this who have these programs so that you can utilize those. If I may mention other ones as well. No, Microsoft, when you're an SME, they go a long way to support your business if you register in terms of providing free software. Make sure you have legal software. They give you cloud space, talking about going digital. So already you can start doing that. And there's the realities of starting a business. Ren spoke about a Range Rover. For me, I wasn't even thinking that big. I couldn't even think going on a date. So be humble. You're building a business, you can't afford software, then understand you're not going to be dating, you're not going to have Netflix, you're not going to have the nicest thing, you are going to be staying home and eating bread. I was staying with my mom, surviving on her pension for multiple years. I'm 39. It was the most embarrassing thing being in my mid-30s and being in that situation. But I had a long-term vision because unlike my other peers who some had the social capital of their families being able to assist, or they just know how to do things. Sometimes luck is involved, right place, right time. Your story is different. Mine wasn't a quick one. It took us 2.5 years to start making revenue. And how we survived it was looking for that program and being humble and staying in my lane. I can't afford to do it. I need money to go buy a laptop. Data is expensive. I can either go for a movie and impress, or I can have money to do my presentation and print my tender on Tuesday or Wednesday. You have to pick a struggle.
Great. What I'm hearing there is think big, execute small,
Yes.
and thinking long term. That's powerful. Zamani, any thoughts?
I would add. There's a couple. I would add. I'm a fervent believer of knowledge, because when you know better, you do better. And so if you look at people like Elon Musk is a good example, even though he's on the extreme end of things, but you spend a good portion of time accumulating as much knowledge as possible, being able to execute ideas that other people could not have thought of, and that comes with an element of ingenuity and sort of having a high IQ. Also being cognizant that the business environment has to facilitate those things. So the fact that Sasol is doing those initiatives is absolutely fantastic. I myself am not even aware of that, so maybe I need to keep my ear to the ground a bit better. But also on the back of that, I've started my own business. So if you look at our CEO, he chairs multiple boards. So multiple streams of income are important. And in building the company, I think South Africa has done a great job of lowering the barrier to entry. There's some things we need to work on. We're not as developed as a Silicon Valley in terms of getting people access to capital to execute those ideas, but we definitely give them the tools, which is important. So I think for me, the ability to just consume as much amounts of knowledge as possible. If you can walk into the room and be able to speak and understand a problem better than anyone else, you can actually slowly start building it out. And if I look at South Africa from a macro standpoint, and I see the fact that we've lowered the requirement from an educational perspective and in relation to our pass mark, that's worrisome. But at the same time, we're saying we have that problem, but we want people to sort of develop these very sophisticated ideas or businesses using technology. It's a little bit of a catch-22.
Yeah.
So we need to be aware that not everyone is built to be an entrepreneur. Not everyone's built to go through that social that social annihilation of saying that that person's going to build up this thing by himself and all that great stuff. We need to be aware of that, but we need to be able to say, hey, you know what, Loyiso's actually went on a limb, built that thing independently. How do we support that with capital, whether it be from big businesses? And big businesses do a lot in terms of getting small suppliers to say, you know what, you actually need a little bit of revenue to build out that that capability. All of those things come around us as a society. So lots of great points I can go on about it for a while. Very passionate about it, but I think it's a good thing that we're starting the conversation, making people aware of things of that nature.
Awesome. MJ, do you wanna, before I come to Shukri?
Sure. Great points. Really hit me. So I'm going to touch on some of them as well. I think fantastic stuff. For me, very simple. And again, I'm going to phrase it because digital, big thing. Let me just zone in on one area, which is comms. Bring your A game to digital. Bring your A game to your digital presence. Check yourself. Make sure that the way you present yourself online is a way that is something that you're proud of, is a way that pushes your business forward, is a way that is, to your point, credible. Stay in your lane. It must make sense for what it is that you're trying to achieve. Sustainable, that you can do it over time. Because one of the worst things we see on say, for example, social media, is a lot of well-intentioned businesses starting off big on social, and then their platforms and their presence just dies after a while. They neglect customer service. They don't leverage that. They don't post frequently enough, so the algorithms push them down. And for me, it's so important that, because it's so easy, because the barrier to entry for social media is so easy, we can all create a Facebook profile in 5 minutes. Doesn't mean that it's something that's a joke. Mm-hmm. If you take it seriously, that's how it helps monetize your business. So you go in and you don't say, I'm going to go and create a Facebook page. I tick a box, therefore I'm ready for business. You go and say, okay, what are my business objectives? What am I trying to achieve? What's my unique selling proposition? What makes me different from everyone else? What makes me stand out? What content do I have to share? Who's my target audience? And then, which channel is best for this? And how do I support it in a way that's credible for my brand, sustainable, so it doesn't die after 2 months, and valuable to the people I'm trying to talk to? So that for me is so important, is if you want to monetize digital, bring your A game to digital.
Beautiful. Shukri, I'll add one or two as well.
Sure, thanks. I really appreciated a couple of stuff that you were saying in terms of the stepwise thought processes, as well what you guys were talking about, getting support from larger business if that's what you're doing. Alternatively, if you're not, if you're not there, then accept it, right? I want to be a little bit, on the flip side of that coin. And what I found, I've got somebody we hired an MD for a business that I'm involved in, and often as he was learning and getting onboarded, he would ask me a question that I didn't have the answer for. Right, and it was a digital business, and I didn't know. And what I did was, what I realized was that most of these problems are solved. So if you don't have a lot of money and you want to start a business and you want to scale up and you want to use, a lot of these issues are already solved, right? It's already available. Software is already available. What the problem is that you need to know where to find it. You really need to know what's the Google search string that you have to add on in order to find the information, or in order to find the free trial, or in order to find the free version. So if you don't have a lot of money and you are an SMME or an SME, essentially what you really need to do is to have the headset, right? You have to have the mindset to be curious and to find the information. That's what digital enabled, right? The digitally connected world enabled that. We can actually find the solutions. It's out there, right? But you have to really believe it and then be curious and interested enough to read things. Which is what you said earlier, knowledge is like that, right? You read it now, it might not be relevant, but through curiosity, you'll read something, and a few months later, you'll know exactly where to go and find the solution to the problem that you're having. And so, whether it's software or whether it's SMEs can do it. You can do it.
Yeah. I like the ideas, and I just want to add 2 dimensions to the ideas that you guys have shared. When I think about this, I think about it in 2 ways, right? In a digital space, one dimension is to create something new that somebody finds exciting. I think that's what companies like Apple do, but it looks like you have to be big enough in order to do that, like set a new trend to do that. And the other dimension is find problems that other companies or clients or people are actually struggling with, and actually start doing that at the smallest of scale. Like again, thinking big and executing small. I mean, we have a lot of concepts like, Kanban, all within the umbrella of agility, Kanban, Scrum. They really help you to decompose something big in the smallest of, at the lowest level of granularity. And then you start executing on that. You can do the same with cost as well. If you break it down, solve smallest piece of problem that helps you to solve a bigger problem that could work. What I'm not sure is this. I see you're eager to make a comment on that opening statement. I'm not sure if it's a really doable thing for like very small companies to invest in setting new trends. I think that could be quite challenging. Anyone who wants to comment on these 2 dimensions before I jump into the questions that we have
You looked
online?
at you,
You jumped off your seat, man. You even scared me. I was like, am I saying something wrong?
No, it was that opening piece where you said something along the lines of, if you wanna come up with a new idea that you may not have the scale to do it.
Okay.
That for me, I think that's the whole point that technology is trying to fix. The digital era is trying to fix, is that if you have the mind to do it, to Shakira's points, that all of the tools are out there and they're readily available. It's now more, I mean, it costs you a couple, 200 Rand to go get a course on Udemy on how to program, right? Python. So that for me isn't the answer. I think if you have the grit, you have access to very low level tools, and if you're passionate about it, you're 100% going to be able to do it. It's just, again, for me, those people, entrepreneurs are built different. And to your point about a new idea, Richard Feynman always said it's very difficult to come up with a new idea because you have to create something that validates everything, all of the sort of previous theories, but comes up with new outputs in a certain domain. So anyone can be creative. Anyone can say, I'm going to use this, going to build a desktop out of this platform. Anyone can do that, but it doesn't make sense because it doesn't validate all the knowledge that comes before it. So again, it takes a certain kind of mind to do that, but the knowledge is definitely out there. MJ, go for it.
Yeah. I think just to add to that as well, again, technology, right? Scary because so much of the unknown. But often technology is just solving for convenience. And we don't celebrate that enough. We look at a platform like Uber and we marvel at the technology. But at the end of the day, that human need that it's solving is that convenience. Same with a lot of the other tech players, And we talk about the big players. The truth is they weren't big 20 years ago. Most of these new players, the tech companies, they didn't even exist. Back when I was watching A-Team with my dad on Friday nights at 7 o'clock. So I guess, again, it's about, to your point, like, it's about having that idea. I mean, there's scariness around the technology, but a lot of that's available. A lot of that scales with you. And it's about constantly iterating, testing, checking, optimizing, and just building from that base, And I think at the end of the day, if you have a really powerful insight that solves a problem, whether it's a community problem, an individual problem, or if it's something that makes life better, pursue it, and then everything else sort of scales up from there. But to come back to an earlier point, we speak a lot about content, but not a lot about context, right? And we find content is of very little value. So yeah, sure, there's thousands of books on digital communication and transformation. I could Google best practice and I'll get 20 million results, right? But you have to keep on asking yourself, especially for the small businesses, what is best practice for you? What is manageable for you? What can you achieve without trying to be the next Google, without trying to be the next Facebook, without trying to be the next Sasol? You know, how do you be the best version of yourself? And for me, so there's a Swiss philosopher, his name is Alain de Botton, and he says, most of what makes a book good is that you're reading it at the right moment for you. And for me, that's all about context. Most of what makes a book good is that you're reading it at the right moment for you. So most of what makes your solution good, most of what makes that solve good, that push to make something better good, is that you're in the right headspace for it and you're hoping to achieve it, you're hoping to push it further. Because a lot of us have 5 great ideas every day, hopefully, but how many of us actually act on that? So again, it comes back to that drive.
So just wanted to mention something earlier, the issue of managing costs. As an SME, you can barter. As an example, if you know that you can build websites, but your A-grade website needs great graphics, find a graphics designer that needs a website, and then you guys can manage it. So we got very far by exchanging services like that. Our accountant, our social media marketing company, we got very far. On this issue of new ideas, it's challenging. There's ideas don't always have to be a product, because maybe as an SME, you don't have the money for research and development and the time for your product to be taken up. But new ideas can also be in how you service your customers. I'm going to give away my trade secret here. I have a cybersecurity company. One of the things that lack in ICT are females in ICT. So a bulk of my business, my security engineers and account managers are black young females. So my value add, my idea, I can't outdo Aeon. I go crazy. I can't out.
Why is everyone painting me as a bad guy?
No. Okay. I've worked for IBM, Microsoft, Gijima, DataCentrix. I can't outdo any of those companies in terms of resources, in terms of anything. But when it comes to customer service and the vibe you get from my team as the CEO and the project manager is a nice, it's going to be hard to beat. So we are hungrier for the business than most other companies. So the idea is just to outwork the bigger guys and outservice the bigger guys. And the other thing is just our culture. We know what we have and what we don't have. What we have is age and agility and cool socks and cool outfits, and we make it work for us. You can't always want to be dealing with, this serious company for cybersecurity. That's the one. And two, your market, the SME and SMB, small businesses and small medium business market is generally ignored. So the businesses with 50 people, 100 people, target those, and they'll love you. So that's what we've been doing. We're doing what they're doing. We just can't fight them like this. So we guerrilla it.
Thank you. Shukri, I understand you have a couple of slides to share with us. The stage is yours.
Sure. So, the slide that I'm going to share, it's just basically one slide, is essentially trying to demystify this whole issue around digital and how do I get my business, and we can't afford, and all of that, and it's really basic, but I think it takes the journey to get online, which is the sort of the seed of where digital is. You've got to get your business online. So how do you do that in context? And then the comment that I've made there in terms of you have less than 3 seconds essentially speaks to Malcolm Gladwell's book that says people form opinions. First impressions are formed in less than 3 seconds, and then it's very hard to change that. And so the way I tie that, the way I think about that is that if somebody, it's even more true for being online. If somebody finds you, whether they end up in your social media channel or they end up on your website, you have very little time to keep them there and to engage them. If I had to see you personally and you didn't like me, I can still try and say something about your suit, right, to make you like me. But you don't have that chance. So that's so let's have a look. So it's difficult to it's difficult to see, the small print there, but I'll talk through it. I'll talk through it in terms of what does it really mean on a very practical level. So to move into a digital space for your business is really what we've done is at Blink and with a partner of ours that's helped us conceptualize this and bring it down to a granular level, is to say where do you start, right? As an SME, where do you really start in order to be successful and not waste money and to maintain that level, to sustain your digital presence? So right at the beginning, you need to plan ahead. You need to really know what is your end goal? What is your destination 5 years from now, 3 years from now? A lot of the companies that I work with, clients that I work with and coach, is they don't really know that. And sometimes it's not their fault because they in business to survive. They lost their job or they chose to go into business, but it's not doing well. And so to think 3 years when you're not even thinking till the end of the month is a horror, right? To think to it. But it's very important, and often it can be kind of a dream. And so that's what step one is plan ahead, know where you're going, and within that we say where does that fit. If you're talking about business language, that's marketing strategy. What is your destination and what's your strategy to get there? How do you understand? So once you've done that, then essentially you can say, okay, so now that I know where I'm going, what am I going to do to get there? What are the steps? The second one is know yourself, right? So you have certain things that makes you great to the world. Right? Why should anyone do business with you? You know that better than anyone else. And if you can't articulate it, then ask. Right? Ask your friends, ask clients that you've been dealing with, but know yourself. And that's your brand strategy that you need to do. So once you know yourself, you then have to make sure that you tell that story. You need to look great. Okay? Now remember, we're talking digital, but none of these things are digital yet. These are things that's very personal, right? So it's got to do with mindset. So you've got to before you go digital, you have the right mindset. First, know yourself, then decide. Okay, I'm going to look great. Then don't launch the website, right? Before you launch that website, make sure that you've gone through everything that's going to make you look the best. Take the time. Right, and identify what is it that looking great means to you, and that essentially, if you're talking about it in a different way, it would be said to be your corporate identity. Right, spend time on that. It's very inexpensive. You can also get the tools, but get a professional to work with you on that. It'll pay off later on. Those are things like as simple as your logo, as simple as your business cards, your email signatures, your presentations letter. It's simple things, marketing 101, very, very easy stuff to do. But it fits under looking great. It doesn't fit anywhere else. After that, I think the important element is what is the messaging that you need to get through. You can have the best channels. You can have you can be everywhere. Let's put it that way. You can have Instagram. You can have Facebook. All of them, you can have it. But what is the message that has to come through? Given that we all have very limited as a client, as your client, or whoever your stakeholder is that you're wanting to convince. What is the message that they should get immediately when they are there? For that, you need to sound great, and that's essentially around copywriting. And once you've completed that, only once you've completed that, go into the website, because now it's a simple matter of throwing it together, right? And so your web design, your social media channels. For an SME, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to take steps 1 to 4 before you get to the stage where you actually launch or you start inviting people to the website. And once you have your website up, now it's not only about the messaging, but now you can start thinking about additional elements. Do people book appointments with you? Instead of phoning and waiting and then mixing up diaries and trying to do, can someone just go on and access your, can they request an appointment and you've published or in your available additional things in that way? Can they order? Is it e-commerce? What's the information? Is it e-commerce or is it just making enough information about your product available, right? Because you've done everything before, you knew exactly what to put on the website, which means the developer of your website is going to charge you a lot less because you can get it done quicker, right? So it's not going to factor in. Okay, after web design and social media, step 6 is be popular, because now you've got all of the assets in place. You're then going to tell the world about it. So that's when you start paying for advertising, not before. You don't pay for advertising when your website isn't optimized. Once you've done that, you want to make sure that you're not wasting money. So you need to have your monthly reports, your analytics that's working very well, so that you can reallocate any capital that you've been spending either on advertising, either on developing social media, either on developing e-commerce. You now know where people are, and you can redirect the funds in the right way or invest more if everything is working properly. And that's basically it. That's, to
Shukri,
get started.
Thank you. Gentlemen, you've got a lot of insights, but I'm running out of time. So I'm going to give you some time to less than 30 seconds, say 1 or 2 words or insights, whatever you want to call it, that you'd like to leave with the audiences. And I'm going to start on the left.
30 seconds, let's go. So, know better, do better, be committed, execute, and think in a manner that's scalable. And that's fundamentally it. Break down everything down to business objectives and go out there and punish. All the tools are there. That's why the digital environment is the way that it is. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Loyiso?
There's sources online like CNET, or follow my own company. Social media could provide a lot of information and stuff like this. But embrace tools. Whether it's the free versions, just be wary with the free ones. But embrace them. It'll help you scale up, like he said. The big guys are fighting for all the business. So if you're small, you're going to be fighting with them, competing with them. Scale up, use the tools. You'll accomplish more with what you have.
Thank you. MJ?
Love sharing. So if you want to chat to me about all the stuff, about content, things like that, check me out on social media, @ConcerningMJ everywhere. Share a lot of YouTube videos as well, and then focus on what you're good at, and don't try and be everything to everyone. Don't try to do everything. Partner. Build together. You're not an island.
Great. Shukri, unfortunately, I'm going to limit you. I would like you to leave us with words around the space of search engine optimization. I think that's important.
Sure. Okay. So the key issue around search engine optimization often overlooked as a marketing tool by smaller businesses. Definitely, it's the cheapest way of doing it. Perception is that it takes long or that it's expensive. Search engine optimization can be as simple as writing the content and publishing on your website. But I think if you don't do it, the big problem with it is that you don't rank when somebody is looking for you, right? Unless your ads come up and then you pay for it. But that products and that information which is critical regarding your business and to your clients, I think it's important that you spend some money to make sure that your business that you use search engine optimization in a way that brings your site up the rankings when somebody's looking for it, because at that point they at the highest likelihood of purchasing. And search engine optimization is the tool with which you can make sure that you rank.
Gentlemen, thank you. My colleagues will receive you on the other side of the stage.
Thank you.
I'll be wrapping up for today, but it's been super great. Thank you.